Welcome aboard. Join us as we dive into the legendary battleships of the two world wars, exploring their history, firepower, and the battles that would shape naval warfare. So let's set sail into the past. She was a ship born from secrecy, built in silence, and meant to rule the oceans like no vessel before her. A floating fortress so massive, her main guns could throw shells the size of cars more than 25 miles. She was named after the very soul of Japan, Yamato. But behind her awe-inspiring size and terrifying power was a deeper truth. The mighty Yamato was not just a warship. She was a gamble, a desperate answer to a world that was changing faster than Japan's admirals could comprehend. The Japanese Navy needed a weapon that could even the odds. Under the constraints of international naval treaties like the Washington and London Naval Treaties, Japan had played along with the West's limits on battleship size and firepower. But behind closed doors, in secret design bureaus and guarded shipyards, that restraint was ending. By 1934, Japan had left the treaty system. It was now free to pursue something unthinkable, a battleship so large, so powerful, that no other navy would dare challenge it. The result would be the Yamato class, the largest battleships ever built by mankind. Construction began in absolute secrecy in November 1937 at the Kure Naval Arsenal. The dry dock was shielded from prying eyes by enormous scaffolds and covered with fabric screens. Only the highest-ranking engineers and naval officers knew what was being built. She was a giant, 263 meters long, over 70,000 tons at full load, and armored like a medieval fortress. Her main armament, 9 46-centimeter guns, the largest ever mounted on a warship. Each one could fire a 1,460-kilogram shell at nearly 2,500 feet per second. Her armor was equally staggering. The main belt was up to 410 millimeters thick, angled and layered to deflect shells from enemy battleships. Her deck was armored to withstand plunging fire and aerial attack. Below the waterline, her hull featured a complex torpedo defense system of layered compartments. Every part of her was overbuilt. Excessive. Terrifying. But she was not just a machine of war. Yamato was built with the reverence of a national shrine. Her interior included spaces adorned with tatami mats, shoji screens, and carved woodwork. She was named after Yamato Province, an ancient name for Japan itself, and symbolized the hope of a nation preparing for total war. Yamato was launched on August 8, 1940, but her existence remained top secret. Even many in the Imperial Navy didn't know her full capabilities. She would not be alone. Her sister ship, Musasha, followed soon after, equally massive, equally mysterious, but already the world was changing. Even as Yamato was being fitted out and commissioned in December 1941, the aircraft carrier was rising to dominance. Just one day after her commissioning, Japanese aircraft attacked Pearl Harbor, thrusting the Pacific into a total war. And yet, as the great battle wagons of America smoldered in the Hawaiian harbor, Yamato sat untouched, hidden from the world. Her purpose was not yet clear. Yamato's first role was not that of a frontline brawler. In fact, for much of 1942, she was held in reserve. Her mere presence, the Japanese believed, would deter the Americans. But this strategy proved flawed. The Battle of Midway in June 1942 turned the war on its head. 4 Japanese carriers sunk in just one day. The tides had shifted. Yamato's guns, designed to fight other battleships in glorious, decisive duels, were virtually useless against hordes of carrier-based planes. It was finally clear the battleship age had slipped away. Still, Yamato was too valuable, too symbolic, to be committed to battle without thought. She was commissioned flagship of the combined fleet, and Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto himself flew his flag aboard her in February 1942. From her bridge, he commanded operations in the South Pacific. She was the pride of the fleet and still remained untouched. But in 1943, the war had turned yet more against Japan. The Americans were pressing steadily ahead in the Solomon Islands. The island-hopping campaign had begun, yet the Yamato, that colossal symbol of naval supremacy, was left without a clear purpose. Her massive guns, impressive on paper, were nearly useless against aircraft soaring above. Her size and sluggish turning radius made her an easy target for submarines and torpedo bombers. And she devoured fuel at an unsustainable rate, tons per hour, a resource Japan's war machine was rapidly running out of. And yet, Yamato still had more to give. Her first brush with real danger came in December 1943. While steaming from Truk Lagoon to Kure, she was struck by a torpedo fired from the American submarine USS Skate. The hit was not fatal, but it shattered illusions. This impressive Yamato, once thought invulnerable, had been wounded by a single torpedo from a vessel the Japanese dismissed as a steelfish. She spent months in dry dock, her full capabilities still shrouded in secrecy, while the Empire of Japan continued its slow, grinding collapse. By spring 1944, Yamato was quietly removed from her role as fleet flagship. The honor passed to her sister ship, Musashi. Yamato returned to the shadows, still powerful, still feared, but relegated to a supporting role. Despite never having fired her guns in a major battle, she remained a ship of legend and a target of obsession for Allied forces, but that status would not last. In the fall of 1944, as the Allies advanced toward the Philippines, Japan prepared one last, desperate naval offensive. Nearly every available warship was called into action. Operation Shogu, the last great gamble, it would be Yamato's first true trial by fire, and it would mark the beginning of the end for the last of the great battleships the world would ever know. The Allies had returned to the Philippines. General MacArthur had waded back onto the beach. And Japan, reeling from defeat after defeat, fixed its gaze on a counterattack such as history had never known. Operation Shogu-1, a last-ditch plan to thwart the American invasion of Leyte Gulf. The plan was complicated, fragmented, and daring. But at its center was one plain hope, that the Americans could be lured into a trap. 3 separate Japanese fleets would converge in the Philippines. The Northern Force, an illusory carrier division, would decoy the powerful US Third Fleet. The Southern Force would descend from beneath. And from the west, Yamato would strike. She was the center of Vice Admiral Tokyo Kurita's center force, the largest and most powerful of the operation's several forces. Yamato had her sister Musashi, along with Nagatu, Kongu, Haruna, and a sea of heavy cruisers and destroyers in tow. In terms of sheer firepower, it was the greatest battleship force since Jutland. But this wasn't 1916, this was 1944, and the Americans were ready. Kurita's ships departed Brunei on October 22nd, cutting through the Palawan Passage. But they were discovered in hours. American submarines Data and Dace lay in wait. It was a deadly ambush. Kurita's flagship, heavy cruiser Atago, was torpedoed and sent to the bottom in minutes. Takao was put out of action. Maya exploded and vanished beneath the surface. Kurita escaped, he transferred to another ship and went on, but it was only going to get worse for the Japanese. Center Force steamed through the Sibuyan Sea on October 24th, and they were seen again, this time by air assets based on the carriers. Large groups of American dive bombers and torpedo bombers from Admiral Halsey's Third Fleet dove down on them. The target was unmistakable. The Musashi. Again and again, she took the brunt of the assault, bombs, torpedoes, even close-range attacks. Her massive armor shrugged off many of the blows, but not all. The sea around her erupted in spray and fire. Still, she endured for hours, guns blazing. No vessel, no matter how huge, could endure perpetually. By nightfall, Musashi had survived over 20 torpedo and 17 bomb impacts. Listing badly, engines on the point of collapse, she was sinking. Her crew went down to the last man, over 1,000 men with her. Yamato had barely fired a shot. But Kurita, incredibly, pressed on. He had no air cover. He had lost one of his 2 super battleships already. But he still believed that he could reach Leyte and strike the exposed American invasion force. On the morning of October 25th, Kurita's fleet emerged out of the San Bernardino Strait and ran into a small American task force, Taffy 3, a escort carrier task force, destroyers, and light support ships. The Japanese had gotten into a firefight with foes who were wielding slingshots, but the Americans did not flinch. The Battle of Samar had begun. Yamato finally opened up. Her massive main guns thundered, firing 1.5-ton shells in ear-shattering arcs. Every salvo spread shockwaves across the sea. But it was no simple task to aim at streaking carriers and destroyers. The Americans fought back with bravery on the verge of madness. Tiny destroyers like USS Johnston, the USS Hull, and USS Samuel B. Roberts jumped into the Japanese fleet's jaws. Their torpedoes found their mark hard. Their cannons blazed till they fell silent. They bought time, in blood. Shaken by the stubborn display of the Americans, and bombarded relentlessly from the air, Kurita started to falter. Disorganization was complete. Torpedo hit reports, American carrier sightings, and visions of reinforcement muddled the scene. Victorious, Kurita made the unthinkably bad choice. He turned around, the center force withdrew. Mighty Yamato and the rest followed. The greatest battleship ever built had fired its cannons in anger, then simply headed for home. It was a crushing defeat for Japan. A tactical defeat wrapped in lost potential. The Yamato had survived, but her time was up. By 1945, the Imperial Navy was no longer a threat to be feared. Its carriers for the most part were submerged. Its air wings destroyed. Its once vaunted fleet a mere shadow of its former glory. Yamato returned to Kure for refitting and repairs. She was outfitted with additional anti-aircraft guns, her decks stacked with barrels. But it was too late. Japan lacked fuel to propel her at full speed. No fleet to escort her. No plan that could alter the course. She was a floating paperweight, a reminder of a past strategy. But Japan was not finished yet. The war raged on, and the Americans were closing in. By March, they were in Okinawa, just 350 miles from Japan's home islands. And now, mighty Yamato would be summoned for her final mission. One final trip. One final battle. Not to win, but to die. The American invasion of Okinawa started. The greatest Pacific War assault by sea. Over 1,300 ships, 180,000 troops, and a steel tide that would burn for months. Japan was on its knees. Wretchedly. Its navy demolished. Its aviation to kamikazes. Its people famished under unrelenting American bombing. But in the midst of the crumbling empire, there stood one final symbol. The mighty Yamato. She was no longer a fleet flagship. She had no air cover, no escorting fleet to shield her from above, no carriers to screen her from the skies. Her massive 18.1-inch guns were useless against planes. Her armor made no difference. But she was still the biggest, still the last. The Imperial Japanese Navy developed a final plan. A desperate charge into the face of sheer firepower. Operation Tengo. Yamato, under Vice Admiral Saiki Ito, would set out from Tokayama with some escorts, a light cruiser, 8 destroyers, and strike the American vessels off Okinawa. None would be coming back. The Yamato would leave herself on the west coast of the island and fight as a stationary battery until annihilated. It was madness, a show of defiance. An offering of steel to the gods of war. At 4 a.m., April 6, 1945, Yamato unmoored. Her colossal turbines roared to life. Her hull cut through the inland sea's black water. American cryptanalysts had long broken the plan. Submarines shadowed the task force. Planes combed the skies. And the mighty U.S. Task Force 58, 11 fleet carriers strong, standing by to intercept. With first light on April 7th, Yamato and her escorts made their way into open sea, south of Kyushu. They never stood a chance. At 12:32 p.m., American carrier radar screens came alive. Hundreds of aircraft were unleashed. Dive bombers. Torpedo bombers. Fighters. An entire armada of destruction. The first wave struck with all force. Helldivers and Avengers descended out of the sky. Yamato's anti-aircraft batteries blazed, raining the sky with fire. But there were too many. Bombs slammed into the forward deck. Torpedoes tore through her starboard side. Her list began to grow, 5 degrees, 10 degrees, and rising. Damage control teams raced to counterflood the hull, but every new strike tipped her further. Around her, chaos reigned. Her escorting destroyers were being annihilated, a Sashimo was lost. Yahaji, the light cruiser, took a fatal blow and slipped beneath the waves. The sea ran red. Still, Yamato fought on. Her gunners fired relentlessly, one turret after another falling silent under the onslaught. A direct hit crushed the bridge. Fires roared below deck. Compartments flooded. More torpedoes. More bombs. At 2:23 p.m., with more than a 30-degree list, the word was given, abandon ship. Men jumped into the water. Others were crushed beneath. Her proud hull was capsizing, her gun sinking beneath, still firing into the air in defiance. Then, a final, apocalyptic burst. Her magazines blew. A pillar of smoke and flame stood over 3 miles high in the air. The blast could be seen from the coast of Kyushu. The sea seethed as a black mushroom of flame consumed the rest of her. The mighty Yamato was gone. Over 3,000 men went down with her. Only 276 survived. It was the largest loss of life on a single warship in history. Her destruction marked the end of an era, the final breath of the battleship as the king of the seas. The age of naval aviation had broken. She never won the war. But she lives on in legend. A testament to ambition, to sacrifice, to the notion that steel and will could defy the forces of history. She lies now on the floor of the East China Sea. Her shattered hull a tomb, a relic, and warning. She was, in her time, a god of war, an unbreachable fortress. But even gods can fall, and Yamato fell not to an enemy battleship, but to the future. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. You can also explore our channel for other battleship videos. Goodbye for now, and Godspeed.